When civil rights icon Reverend Ralph David Abernathy arrived in heaven on April 17, 1990, he was met by a crowd of friends anxious to hug and talk to him. Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. rushed forth and was the first to give him a hug. He tearfully spoke, "Ralph, it is so good to see you, my friend. I have missed you so much." Dr. King takes a few steps back and looks Dr. Abernathy up and down. He smiles. "So this is what it looks like to be 60-ish. Ralph, how do you think I would look at 64? Can you imagine me with gray hair and glasses?" Both men laughed. "Ralph, I hear you wrote a book called And the Walls Came Tumbling Down, which really shook some folks up. Wished I could have helped you with it. We would have really created a stir." Medgar Evers, civil rights leader who was slain in the driveway of his Mississippi home, interrupts, "Don't take up all his time, Martin. We want to talk to him too." Evers puts his arm around Abernathy and they take a few steps. Evers says, "I hear the Klan is still marching and having rallies. I'm happy to hear that they aren't getting the attention they did in the 50s and 60s. And who are these people calling themselves skinheads? The last thing we need is another group promoting hatred. And did they ever find out who was sending those mail bombs to the NAACP headquarters?" Harold Washington, first black mayor of Chicago, cuts in, "Later for that, Medgar. I want to hear about Jesse Jackson's run for the presidency of the United States." The questions were coming faster than Abernathy could answer them. He smiled to see that his old friends were still interested in events since their departures. Malcolm X steps up next. "Ralph, do you think that desegregation stuff going on in metro Atlanta will result in forced busing? I thought those DeKalb County schools were already integrated. What more are they trying to do? It may be possible to only achieve so much racial balance. People still like to send their children to schools in their own neighborhoods. There's nothing wrong with that." Dr. King pushes his way back to the front of the crowd. Okay, my friends. Ralph can get to all those things later. Let me spend some time with him now. We have many years to discuss." The crowd obliged Dr. King and slowly dispersed. Shortly, the two men were alone. They took a seat on the ground facing each other and smiled. "I've waited a long time for this, Ralph." "Me too, Martin." "So, Ralph, what have the past 2 decades been like?" "Oh, it's okay. Since your death, some say that I tried to take your place." "That's simply not true. I just wanted to continue your work." "And you mean our work, Ralph?" Dr. King interrupted. Dr. Abernathy continued, "Last year when I wrote my memoir, I was accused of betraying you. Some say that I was a Judas. That really hurt, Martin. Some of the same people who protested with us in the 50s and 60s said that I was not your friend. You always reminded me that I was your best friend. I felt like I had been stabbed in the back when such criticism was made. I would never hurt you, Martin." Dr. King placed his hand on Dr. Abernathy's shoulder. "Don't worry about that anymore, Ralph. There are no walls between us." Wanting to relieve his friend's burden, Dr. King abruptly changes the subject. "Tell me about the strides in civil rights." Dr. Abernathy shook his head in disgust. "I'm ashamed to say, Martin, that racism is more blatant than ever. There are still incidents of racially motivated police brutality. Some white teachers protested transfers to schools with predominantly black children. And the drugs, Martin. You've never seen such destruction. This poison is killing our men, women, and children. But not all is bad, Martin. There are black and white children playing together and living as neighbors in Stone Mountain, Georgia, just like you envisioned in your I Have a Dream speech." "No kidding, Ralph." "Really, Martin? There are churches where blacks and whites worship together. There are schools where parents are happy about the different ethnic groups attending." "Martin, you won't believe this. There's a black woman who has a syndicated television talk show. I've been on it. Her name is Oprah Winfrey. She's given Phil Donahue and Geraldo Rivera some stiff competition." "Geraldo who?" Dr. King asked, looking puzzled. "Oh, maybe you didn't know him, but he's a minority too." "Martin, our people are calling themselves African Americans instead of blacks." Again, Dr. King looked perplexed. "Ralph, that's going to take some getting used to for me. I think I like the word Negro best." The two comrades talk about other issues and the accomplishments of their family members. There was so much to cover that they could barely complete one topic before jumping to another. After a while, they took a break from the conversation and sat quietly. Abernathy was the first to break the silence. "Martin, a lot has been done, and society has made improvements, but there's still so much left to do." He grabbed Dr. King's hand and bowed his head. "Let's pray, Martin." And Dr. King stood up and smiled. "No need for that anymore, Ralph. Let's just go talk to God about it, face to face. Written by Diane Harvey in Atlanta, April 1990.